Scared for real.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill.
Adam Perry.
And we actually have a fan request this week.
First time ever fan request. I want to give a shout out to loyal listener Ryan Smith. He's listened to every one of our shows.
Oh, good.
He loves our conversations, and he reached out to me personally and said, I watched a movie a couple weeks ago, and I'd love to hear you guys talk about it. And that is 1976, The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
The Town That Dreaded Sundown. This is actually loosely based on a real event. And they called it the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. They're crimes attributed to an unidentified serial killer known as the Phantom Killer. And, you know, it's one of those things. This movie plays out kind of like the way Texas Chainsaw Massacre did, semi-documentary style. The only difference, this is actually based on truth, whereas the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was not.
Mm-hmm.
And these happened the months that followed World War II. It was 1946.
Right.
And, you know, America was still recovering from World War II. And then they had to deal with this small town. It wasn't a big town, trying to equivalate it to a town that we know. I think my hometown of Barrie, Vermont, you could kind of compare it to that. It's like you blink, you miss it.
Right.
And you start, even like two people getting offed, and that's how it started. Lover's Lane, they called it. Lover's Lane. These two young teenagers get killed, and that's what starts it. And that's enough to rock a small town like that and put everyone into panic mode.
Oh, sure.
And so there you have it. That's how the film starts. And it states that the incredible story you're about to see is true, where it happened, how it happened, only the names have been changed. And the actual Phantom himself attacked 8, or it could have been herself. We don't know the identity of this Phantom, but he or she attacked 8 people near the town of Texarkana, which, you know, Arkansas-Texas border. Most of the murders occurred in rural areas outside, like in they say it happened in Bowie County, probably named after Jim Bowie, the knife guy, the famous knife guy at the Alamo. While the film has them occurring in Arkansas, however, the general outline of the murders largely follows reality, with mostly minor artistic license taken. Because, I mean, it plays out. It's very, again, it's like semi-documentary, and most of the actors in the movie are actual non-professional actors.
Right.
There's like very few. You have Ben Johnson, very famous. Ben Johnson started off as a stuntman, character actor for John Ford. Tough guy in a lot of Westerns. He adds a lot of oomph to the movie. He's always a lot of fun to watch. And, of course, you have Marianne from Gilligan's Island. She has a small role in it. And I think there's the guy who plays the sheriff. I forget his name, but he's a professional actor. But the rest are non-professionals.
Yeah.
You know, you have like 3 professional actors and I think having non-professional actors, it all dates back to Italian cinema. They call it neo-realism. When you have like these faces that are not pretty,
right,
that don't act professionally, it gives the film a sense of like realism.
Right.
You feel like this is, you know, you're watching a documentary, even though Ben Johnson, you know, is not like a real life sheriff, you know.
Right. And, you know, you go back to the documentary, you know, aspect of it, to have it narrated by Vern Stearman, it really gave it that, like, this really happened, this really, you know, type, you know, which I thought was very unique compared to, you know, what would to come later. I mean, this is right before the slasher craze gets kicked off by Halloween. I mean, we did have Texas Chainsaw Massacre before, and you know, obviously Psycho, but like,
they called it like the drive-in movie craze of the 70s. It kind of started, it dates all the way back to his 1972 film, The Legend of Boggy Creek. You know, the same guy, actually, Vern narrated that film too 4 years before. But yeah, that movie was like a cult B movie. It played a lot in drive-ins. So it's like this whole 70s era was the time for the drive-in movies. Movies that were panned by critics, because there wasn't a lot of critics at the time who liked this movie. They even said Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which they also panned, was a much better movie than this. I agree with that assessment, but at the same time, it's these critics, unfortunately at that time, nowadays critics' opinions don't really matter as much anymore. I hate to say that, but it's true. But back in that time, if Gene Siskel, Roger Ebert championed a movie, sometimes that helped out several cult movies become like available
Big
to
hits.
watch.
Yeah, and
there was Carl Franklin movie, One False Move, was a perfect example. 1991, Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel both praised the hell out of the movie, and because of that, they re-released it in theaters a year later, and it grew, and it had like a huge home video life because of critics. Yeah. But nowadays, no one has that kind of clout, and unfortunately, this movie, when it came out, it kind of came and went. It was kind of forgotten about, but we'll talk about the home video life later. But man, oh man, this was we're going to obviously give some spoiler alerts here. This is a movie I highly recommend that you seek out because, again, I didn't have any expectations watching it. Ryan tipped us off and wanted to hear our thoughts about this movie. And I was pleasantly surprised on how much I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, Chris, this was I had seen this movie before. Again, when I started my journey into horror, it was one of the ones that I always heard about. So I watched it pretty early on. But you watched it for the first time this week after,
right?
So tell us what you thought.
Well, I love the grisly look of the film. Now it has a grainy feel to it, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre did.
Yeah,
and when it comes to pristine home video quality, when I don't have it on physical media, but I know Shout Factory released a Blu-ray of it a while ago. But it's like, to me, this is a movie that works better in a grainier, dirtier, because it just gives it a more realistic type vibe.
Oh, I agree.
And it was like, there's a lot of Sam Peckinpah influence, the way the violence is handled. Sam Peckinpah was the master, especially in American cinema, when it came to filming violence. The slow motion deaths and stuff like that. Shaw Brothers definitely was influenced by Sam Peckinpah, the way some of them shot their violence. But I know Pierce definitely noted that Peckinpah was an influence. And look at the same hood that was used in that movie was used in Friday the 13th
Part 2.
Yeah. And just the trombone murder was the thing that It was. I can't imagine how people saw that for the first time. They were shocked because no one had ever seen a killing like that before. And it's like the Coen brothers of the 70s, it's like, how can we invent new ways for people to get killed?
Yeah, exactly.
The Coen brothers, they've reinvented the wheel, like killing people with that bolt gun for cows, wood chippers and stuff like that. Coen brothers have reinvented the death scenes. I think Pierce started that craze. A trombone, tying a knife to the end of a trombone and stabbing someone with it while they're tied up. It's a gruesome death. It's very shocking, and it wasn't meant to laugh at. It was just, you and I are kind of numb to that now because we have Eli Roth and we have the Saw movies. They don't glorify violence, but it just revels too much in it. Back then, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it really didn't show that much.
Right.
To see someone getting stabbed with a trombone is just shocking. You could probably see somebody bashing somebody with a trombone, but tying a knife to the end while they're tied up, it's an unforgettable scene. It's shocking, though.
It's an unforgettable scene. Let's face it, the fact that he is stabbing this poor woman with a trombone, it is on the tad corny and cheesy side. But I don't think it was corny. I didn't get the corny impression. I think, but the reason I say we've been kind of numb to the way the violence has been presented since 1976. At the time it was filmed, people saw that in the theaters. They probably didn't know how to take it. They hadn't seen any deaths like that before. Yeah,
it's corny now because, again, I think we've been dumbed down with the violence. We're kind of numb to it because the way it's been presented in movies.
Yeah, but what I was getting at is I think the reason why the scene works so well, even with, because after the slasher craze, again, that was the name of the game. How can we kill someone in the most unique way? It was the build to that scene.
Right.
You have this poor woman tied to a tree. She can't go anywhere. And this guy's just taking his time messing with her.
Yeah.
You know, before he even actually stabs her. I mean, that intense build to the little silly, you know, I'm going to stab you with a trombone is way more terrifying than, at least to me, it really shocks you.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's what Pierce. That was his intention.
Yeah,
I'm not reading it word for word, but I remember him reading an interview, a quote that was his intention. To me, like, yes, Sam Peckinpah, but he must have seen some Giallo Italian murder films as well, because the whole thing with Giallo is they're masked somehow and they use different objects to kill people with.
Yeah.
So to me, yes, Sam Peckinpah, but I think he also was inspired by Giallo horror films, although I can't find any information that he was, but he must have been, because Giallo was a huge craze in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. You know, Brian De Palma was definitely influenced by it. You could tell with the way he shot colors. And I mean, Dario Argento was the one who made Giallo horror a bigger thing than what it was. But before he came out, there was Torso. I kind of mentioned that one in the 1973. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of Giallo influence in this movie as well.
So other than the
well, I thought the whole movie was well done. It was very realistic, and I read that
I was just going to bring that up.
No script.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a script, but they didn't know how to end it. So I think Pierce had to come up with the ending because the screenwriter just couldn't find an ending. It had to end somehow. But the thing is, you know, spoiler alert, even if you read about it, it's not really a spoiler alert. The killer was never caught, never identified. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they caught a guy for stealing a car, speeding, and all that kind of stuff, but they didn't catch the real killer. That's the thing that's alarming. It's like the French Connection that came out 5 years before. You know, you got this obsessive cop, Ben Johnson, again, a lot of props to just his screen presence. Now, Ben Johnson wasn't the type of actor Gene Hackman was, but he showed up, he had an aura about him. He was just one of those unforgettable character actors, and he was a tough guy. You didn't mess with him. There are some funny scenes. Again, we were talking about what is horror. There are some funny scenes in the movie. It's not a comedy, but it's to lighten the seriousness of the movie. Because if you didn't have any comedy in any of these movies, any scenes that make you laugh, even Killers of the Flower Moon, you're left with just like the Joker had no funny scenes in it, and the movie just left a bad taste in your mouth. Right. And you got to have some lightness with all of this dread and killing and depressing stuff that's going on. You got to have some stuff to lighten it up. And, you know, it was great that Ben Johnson was, you know, able to add some laughs. The tough guy who gets kind of scared of riding in a vehicle with this guy who's just a horrible driver. You know? So I thought the movie was a lot. Again, I had no expectations when watching it. I have only heard about the movie. It grew a cult following thanks to the drive-ins. Right. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I could watch it again.
Awesome. I mean, you know, when we come talk to the slasher genre, one thing I really champion about this movie and what I really like is of all the slashers, even you you can consider Texas Chainsaw Massacre a slasher, the first slasher, Psycho, all had an element of, you know,
realism.
But this was like legit.
Based on a true story.
Yeah, like this you watch and you like, this can happen.
Right.
You know,
well, I mean, you know, Psycho 2 was based on real people.
Yeah,
but I mean, this actually was an event that actually happened.
Right. And like I said, with Psycho, I mean, you have the twist with the you know, the dual personality thing, and it, you know, but like again, this, like, if you were to face a real life serial killer in real life, like this is probably what you're going to see.
Right. And the good guys don't always win.
Yes.
And that was one thing that Friedkin presented in the French Connection. The main bad guy gets away. Mm-hmm. Gene Hackman, thankfully, Ben Johnson's character didn't kill one of his own guys like Gene Hackman's character did in The French Connection, but he was obsessive too, and it's so disarming, and the movie leaves you disarmed, and it's rightfully so. Like, man, the guy is probably dead now, but you don't know. I mean, that was 1946, so the guy's probably not with us anymore. But just the fact that it's unknown,
right?
There was never any closure. They never caught anyone that was. See, this is on a smaller level. Like the Zodiac was obviously a nationwide thing.
Sure. Yeah.
This was just a town.
Yeah.
They brought a state like law enforcement guy to solve the problem, but National Crime Department of Justice could not solve the Zodiac.
Right.
So this was like a Zodiac on a smaller level for Texas and Arkansas. And that's what makes it so alarming. Obviously, this was a better movie than Zodiac. We'll talk about, if we really want to delve into Zodiac, that movie was a snooze in my opinion, but I'm in the minority. But getting back to this movie, though, I was just so pleasantly surprised on how much I enjoyed it, because some of these movies are better than others.
Yeah, and it's really funny as I look, kind of like go through the stats and the impact of this movie. I mean, this movie wasn't. It's kind of like a forgotten gem now, because this movie was a success. I mean, the budget was $400,000, and it makes $5 million at the box office.
Right.
I mean, for 1976, that's huge.
Yeah.
And to have it, almost like I said, a forgotten gem nowadays. It's like kind of like one of those respected things, but no one really knows about it. It's again.
But I think the main success was playing in the drive-ins, because I can't believe it was released Christmas Eve, 1976.
Yeah,
that was when it premiered, and I'm just like, wow. And it did. It was played all over Europe as well: Sweden, West Germany, the Philippines. But yeah, I mean, it played in drive-ins nonstop until it made its debut a couple years later. Yeah, the home media stuff, that it was released on VHS in 1983. Warner Home Video released it, and then they re-released it in 1988. Good Times Video also released it on VHS in 2001, and I guess TCM occasionally airs versions of this movie. I guess it had a digital release May 21st, 2013. I talked about the Shout Factory disc. It was released as a Blu-ray combo with Pierce's later film called The Evictors. I haven't seen that one. But again, this is the Pierce movie that everyone talks about.
Right.
More than any of his other movies. And it doesn't have quite the interesting home media life as The Wicker Man did, but it's still, I mean, it grew by word of mouth. I definitely enjoyed the film for sure.
Yeah, and of course, with all good horror movies, it brings some controversy. There were some lawsuits that stemmed.
Oh yeah,
from this movie.
One of the guys sued them because his sister was not portrayed in a good light.
Yes, yeah.
I remember reading that.
Real life brother of victim Polly Ann Moore. So in 1978, sued for $1.3 million for invading privacy.
Did he win?
Let's see. Claim his sister.
Because you had to get some sort of permission to do a film of this nature, since it's real. Right. And I know they changed the names. Mm-hmm. Again, some of these lawsuits, I mean, it brings more attention to the film, which is good in a lot of cases, because I know a few years later, Raging Bull came out, and Jake LaMotta's brother sued Martin Scorsese, De Niro, and all of them for how they made his character look in the movie, and I like De Niro won the Oscar, and they're like, we like to thank Joey LaMotta, even though he's suing us.
Right. Well, it says right here. 1978, Mark Melton Moore, the brother of real-life victim Polly Ann Mickles, took Pierce to court for $1.3 million for invading his privacy. He claimed that his sister, who was portrayed as Emma Lou Cook in the film, was depicted as a high school dropout, a woman with loose morals and low IQ. Mm-hmm. In real life, that was not true. And She graduated at the age of 16. The court denied his claim in 1976. Moore filed again in 1980 to the Texas Supreme Court, and the Sixth Court of Civil Appeals agreed that his privacy was not invaded. Enough was changed.
And I know I don't know if you read about the lawsuit about the film's ad campaign. Like city officials of Texarkana voted to file a lawsuit. I guess when city officials visited D.C., they were kidded about the film's tagline. The mayor explained the ad is too much. It's not true. There's objection and that this whole thing will be spreading fear in the community. There are relatives of the victims still living here, and this is very unpleasant to them. I guess Pierce worked with America International, the ones who helped fund the movie. They tried to remove the still lurking statement, but it remained on the posters,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that was the whole point. The guy was never caught. So.
Mm-hmm. And also in 1978, the movie was brought to court again after a teenager shot and killed another high school friend. Explaining, he wanted to be an outlaw and linked the shooting to watching The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
But I think he wanted to be like Jesse James, though.
But he also references watching this movie, as a
though there's really no like shootings. I mean, he's stabbed and choked.
Yeah. But I mean, again, blame everything on the horror movies.
Blame Judas Priest for committing suicide.
Yeah.
And all that. I remember that too.
So there's no immediate sequel to the movie also.
Yeah, let's talk about the loose remake because it's also called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. It came out 2014. You actually saw this movie last week, didn't you?
Yeah. Tubi played it back to back with the original.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. You can watch these movies on Tubi.
Yes. And again, this is another one of those movies that's a part of the huge remake craze that happened in the 2000s and 2010s. This is one of the later ones. And it's not really a remake. It's more of a
sequel,
tribute sequel. Yeah, because you have a killer dressed as our Phantom Killer from the original, and he's basically recreating the murders from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. I mean, even to the point that the movie itself is talked about and shown at a drive-in. The original movie.
I guess
I didn't like it.
Well, that's the thing.
Not many people did.
Inspired by watching a movie at a drive-in, all I can think of is Targets having like offing people at a drive-in.
Yeah, but Targets.
It doesn't.
Targets was good.
That was a good movie. Yes.
Targets was good. So basically with the remake / sequel. Again, it's interesting concept as it's the same town. They took the Phantom Killer story and basically made a movie of it. And now you have someone obsessed with the movie recreating
because
what happened before. And again, it's really funny to see the 76 movie like on a movie screen as he's chasing people through the drive-in.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like the 1970s movie was an event that took place in the 40s.
Yep.
And then he's watching it, and then he gets inspired by it. I mean, I like on paper. It sounds like it'd be a good idea, but the way it's presented, it doesn't sound like it's that good.
Well, that's just on paper. A lot of these sequels seem fantastic.
Right.
But execution, nah.
Well, and that's the thing. Like Pierce actually shot the original movie in different places in Arkansas. Whereas, this film is about Texarkana, but the film was shot in Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's not near Texas.
Oh, no.
It's not even near Arkansas, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people who think the reason why this failed, you can blame Jason Blum for this. He produced it.
Jason Blum, I know he's one of your favorites, Adam.
Oh, yeah.
That's all you got to say about that?
For now. The thing about Blumhouse, they do good things. Like I really enjoyed paranormal, at least the first couple of Paranormal Activities. But it seems like then they try to overreach, and that's where they fail. Instead of sticking to what they're good at, And the perfect example is their Halloween trilogy that they just put out. And I'll be the first to say the 2018 Halloween that they did, I thought was done very well. I thought for a movie, and again, I know we're talking about Town That Dreaded Sundown, but since you got me on Blumhouse, they do the 2018 Halloween reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it, wiping out the family lineage and whatever, which I thought was a good idea. I thought the movie was executable. I thought the movie did what it needed to do. And then you got the two sequels that just completely destroyed any credibility and any joy that I got out of the first one because they were just so bad. Oh, and again, it was, you reset it to put it in, give it a direction where I think the Halloween franchises needed to go, and then you just shit all over it. And pardon my language, but that's what you did. You know.
Well, Alfonso Gomez Rejon, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He began as a personal assistant to Scorsese, De Niro, and a year after he made this sequel of sorts, he actually directed a good movie called Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which was one of the best films of 2015. Hard to comprehend that guy directed that movie. I know Scorsese helped fund that movie because it was more a personal project, but I had no interest in seeing the remake or the sequel, whatever you want to call it, because it had the same name,
right? But
it was just like an imaginary thing, whereas the original was based on fact.
Right.
So if you're going to watch The Town That Dreaded Sundown, make sure it's the 1976 version with Ben Johnson, because that's the one to watch. Again, not a masterpiece, but man, it's a good one, and it's definitely, I know I would watch it again.
Again, when we're talking the slasher genre and horror, there's so many cookie cutters. There's so many of the same thing overdone, reproduced. This is a very unique. Again, this is right before the slasher craze of the 80s that was kicked off by Halloween. So it still had. It was creative. It had the freedom of not being. Again, a cookie cutter movie. Like you can argue Friday the 13th.
You couldn't tie it to any particular influence. It was part giallo. It was part Sam Peckinpah influence, but it was his own unique movie. And again, it felt like you're watching a documentary. 3.5 stars is what I give.
I put this one up at about a 3.8, maybe even a 3.9. Not one of my all-time favorites, but something that I do enjoy watching every once in a while. It's a good movie. There's a low-budget charm to it, and one thing that everybody talks about, and you didn't even notice, but
I was watching it on my on a smaller screen,
but
so I didn't.
The finale of the movie is
with the train.
As we're chasing the Phantom Killer across the train tracks, and we see a cameraman on the train
very quickly, though.
Yeah, you gotta love stuff like that.
Well, I was just in suspense, and that whole, I loved how Pierce, the whole movie was very intense, and there was a lot of suspense to it. But them chasing the guy underneath, they're opposing sides of the train, and he was able to shoot the guy in the leg, but they still can't find him. And it was just that intensity that made it so good that the train added a lot of tension to it.
Yeah,
shooting, you couldn't see the guy. He nicked him a little bit, but the guy still got away.
All the kills in this movie, the intensity's just upped. Like we talked about the trumpet killing, but the one before that, when the cop finds the abandoned car and it's raining, they really up the sound on the rain,
right?
And then on purpose, so you don't. He's kind of lost. He's his senses are off. And then he hears a gunshot. You don't really know what's going on, and you don't know if he's gonna walk up on the killer, or then you see the killer kind of sneaking behind him and getting in his own car and just missing him. It really set up well, really good suspense.
It definitely needs to be seen. And again, if you have seen this movie and you've never seen a giallo Italian murder thriller, you probably should check those out too. There's a lot of them I know Arrow Video released a lot of the giallo films, and I know Vinegar Syndrome has. But if you want to get a decent copy of The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Scream Factory, Shout Factory, yes, they're very expensive, but at least you get like a double feature with it. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Thank you, Ryan, for pointing that out to us.
Yes, and everybody else who listens to the show, this was a real treat for us. Again, this is a movie that Chris has never seen and, got to give his first thoughts on it, and this is stuff we love to do. So if you would like to hear our opinions and discuss a movie that you like and don't think we would come across it in this podcast journey, let us know.
We always seek different movie recommendations. I love to watch as much cinema as I can handle. Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send us a message there, or go to our YouTube page and you can comment. Just reach out to us. Let us know what you think of our podcast, our episodes. Are we doing a good job? Are we doing a bad job? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's comment or scathing rebuttals. We'd love to hear it. So again, find Scared for Reals, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.
We'll see you next time on Scared for Reals.